What if the Exodus, the most iconic escape story in Western memory, was never truly about a nation fleeing from an ancient empire? What if, hidden beneath the sands of Egypt and the words of Scripture, lies a secret map of the soul, a spiritual code encrypted by those who saw the world not as it appeared, but as it truly is? For centuries, the tale of Moses leading his people out of bondage has been celebrated as a triumph of faith and freedom. But for the Gnostics, those seekers of hidden wisdom who challenged the very foundations of religious authority, the Exodus was never just a tale of bricks, mortar, and miracles. It was a riddle, a parable, a cipher for the greatest journey any human can undertake, the path from ignorance into knowledge, from darkness into light. In the world of the Gnostics, Egypt is not merely a place on a map, it is a state of being, a prison of the senses, a land ruled by the demiurge, the false creator who fashions the material world as a cage for the divine spark within each soul. The pyramids, the temples, the golden idols, all symbols of the illusions and distractions that keep us enthralled by the visible, while the invisible truth slips quietly by. The Pharaoh, in this reading, is not just a king. He is the warden of the flesh, the voice of ego and fear, the force that whispers, "Stay, obey, forget who you are." And Moses, he is more than a prophet or a leader. He is the awakening mind, the logos, the call from the depths of being that refuses to accept the world as it is handed down. Born in secret, raised in the house of his oppressor, Moses embodies the divine spark hidden in the heart of matter forgotten but not extinguished. His story begins not with triumph, but with danger, an infant set afloat on the Nile, a river both of life and death, of memory and forgetting. The Gnostics saw in this image a profound symbol each of us, cast into the waters of this world, searching for the shore of remembrance. The burning bush, too, takes on new meaning. For the Gnostic, it is not simply a miracle, but a moment of awakening, a sudden blinding awareness that the world is not what it seems. The bush burns, but is not consumed. So too does the soul, trapped in the world's illusions, yearn for the fire of knowledge that will not destroy but transform. The voice from the bush is the voice of the true God, the hidden source beyond the demiurge, calling Moses, and by extension all of us, to remember our origin and our purpose. But the journey out of Egypt is fraught with peril. The chains of slavery are not only iron and whips, they are habits of thought, patterns of fear, the inertia of a life lived in shadow. The Israelites, in the Gnostic imagination, are not merely a people, but the multitude of souls, each carrying within them a fragment of the divine, each longing for liberation. Their suffering is the suffering of all who have forgotten their true nature, all who have mistaken the world's glitter for its gold. The plagues that descend upon Egypt are not just punishments from an angry deity. They are the convulsions of awakening, the violent disruptions that shake the soul from its sleep. Darkness covers the land, frogs and locusts swarm, water turns to blood. Each plague is a metaphor for the soul's struggle to break free from the grip of the demiurge, to see through the illusions that bind it to the world of matter. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart is the resistance of the ego, the refusal to let go of control, the terror of the unknown. As the story unfolds, the Passover emerges as a moment of profound transformation. The blood on the doorposts is not only a sign of protection, but a mark of those who have chosen to remember, to awaken, to step into the unknown. The angel of death passes over, sparing those who have claimed their true identity, who have dared to reject the world's definitions. For the Gnostics, this is the threshold, the moment when the soul decides to leave behind the comforts and certainties of Egypt, no matter the cost. Yet the journey is just beginning. The Israelites flee into the night, pursued by the armies of Pharaoh. The Red Sea looms ahead, a barrier, a test, a symbol of the great divide between the world of illusion and the world of truth. To cross it is to risk everything, to trust in a power greater than fear, to believe that there is a land beyond the horizon where the soul can be free. But what is this promised land? Is it a place, a promise, a reward for obedience? Or is it, as the Gnostics believed, a state of being, a return to the pleroma, the fullness of divine light from which all souls have come and to which all long to return? The answer, they insisted, is hidden in the journey itself, in the willingness to question, to seek, to remember. As the Israelites step into the wilderness, the story of Exodus becomes not just a tale of a people, but the story of every soul. The Gnostics invite us to see ourselves in these wanderers, to recognize our own Egypts, our own pharaohs, our own burning bushes. They challenge us to ask, what chains still bind us? What illusions still hold us captive? What voice calls us to awaken? The sands of Egypt are behind, but the journey into the unknown has only begun. As the wilderness opens before us, the mystery deepens, and the search for hidden knowledge becomes more urgent. What secrets lie ahead? What dangers and revelations await in the desert of the soul? The next chapter beckons, promising deeper insights, greater challenges, and the possibility of a freedom unlike any the world has ever known. The wilderness is not what anyone expects. It is not simply a blank space between slavery and freedom, but a crucible, a place where the soul is stripped bare and every illusion is tested. The Israelites, newly escaped from Egypt, carry with them more than just memories of oppression. They carry the habits of bondage, the scars of fear, and the persistent whisper that perhaps the safety of chains is better than the terror of the unknown. For the Gnostics, this is the true beginning of the Exodus. The crossing of the Red Sea was a birth, a passage through the waters of forgetfulness into the harsh light of self-knowledge. The sea itself, deep and mysterious, is the threshold between worlds. In Gnostic thought, it echoes the primordial waters of chaos, the abyss from which creation and the soul emerges. To step into the sea is to risk annihilation, to confront the possibility that everything you have known is a lie. Yet only by crossing can the soul hope to awaken. The moment the waters part, something irreversible happens. The old world, with its certainties and routines, is gone. The Israelites stand on the far shore, the sea closing behind them, and realize that there is no going back. In this moment, the Gnostics see the soul's first taste of freedom, a freedom that is both exhilarating and terrifying. The wilderness is not a punishment, but an opportunity, a blank slate on which a new self might be written, if only the old self can be left behind. But the wilderness is relentless. The sun burns, the nights are cold, and the promise of the promised land seems as distant as ever. Hunger and thirst gnaw at the body, and the people's faith begins to falter. "Why did you bring us out here to die?" they cry. "Were there not enough graves in Egypt?" The Gnostics hear in these complaints the voice of every soul that has begun to awaken, only to discover that enlightenment is not instant, that the path to knowledge is paved with doubt, longing, and pain. Here, the plagues of Egypt are replaced by the plagues of the heart. The Israelites grumble and quarrel, turning on Moses, on each other, on the God who led them out. The wilderness strips away the comforts and distractions of Egypt, leaving only the raw, unmediated self. It is in this emptiness that the real struggle begins. The battle between the higher and lower natures, between the divine spark and the shadow of the demiurge. Moses, too, is transformed by the desert, and by no longer the Prince of Egypt, no longer the miracle worker of the plagues. He becomes the mediator between the people and the hidden God. The Gnostics see in Moses the archetype of the awakened mind, struggling to guide the soul through the chaos of unknowing. He is not infallible. He doubts, he despairs, he pleads for help. Yet he persists, driven by a vision that he cannot fully share or explain. The manna that falls from heaven is more than food. It is a symbol of the hidden knowledge that sustains the soul in its journey. Each day it must be gathered anew. Yesterday's manna will not suffice. The Gnostics understood this as a lesson. Spiritual nourishment cannot be hoarded or relied upon from the past. Each day, the soul must seek, must question, must open itself to fresh revelation. The pillar of fire by night and the cloud by day are guides, but they do not show the whole path. The way forward is always uncertain, always shrouded in mystery. The Israelites follow, sometimes in faith, sometimes in fear, always wondering if the promised land is real or just a mirage. The Gnostics saw in this uncertainty the essential condition of the seeker. To search for gnosis is to walk in darkness, trusting that the light will appear at the next turning. Temptations arise in the wilderness, and with them the ever-present lure of Egypt. At every setback, the people remember the leeks and onions, the flesh pots and bread, the certainty of slavery. The Gnostics recognized this as the soul's nostalgia for the world of matter, the longing to return to the familiar, even when it means surrendering freedom. The golden calf, fashioned in a moment of panic and impatience, is not just an idol, but a symbol of the soul. Its tendency to worship what it can see, to settle for substitutes when the true God seems distant. Yet even in their failures, the Israelites are not abandoned. The wilderness is a place of testing, but also of grace. Water flows from the rock, quails descend in the evening, and forgiveness is offered again and again. The Gnostics saw in this the mercy of the true God, who understands the weakness of the soul and offers guidance, not condemnation. As the days stretch into years, the wilderness becomes a school of the Spirit. The Israelites learn slowly and painfully to trust in what they cannot see, to let go of the certainties of Egypt, to accept the mystery of the journey. For the Gnostics, this is the heart of the Exodus, not the escape from a tyrant, but the transformation of the soul. The wilderness is the crucible in which the divine spark is fanned into flame, in which the seeker learns to distinguish the voice of the demiurge from the whisper of the true God. The journey is far from over. Ahead lies Sinai, the mountain of revelation, where the boundaries between heaven and earth will blur and the greatest mysteries will be unveiled. But for now, the Israelites walk the long, hard road of becoming, each step a testament to the power of the soul to endure, to question, to hope. And so the wilderness stretches before them, vast and uncharted, a landscape both external and internal. The next chapter of the Exodus will reveal what happens when the soul, having shed the trappings of Egypt, stands face to face with the divine. What laws will be given? What secrets will be revealed? The journey continues, and with it the promise that the greatest mysteries are yet to come. The wilderness, harsh and endless, is not merely a test of endurance. It is a veil, a liminal space where the ordinary rules of the world are suspended and the possibility of revelation hovers in the air. For the Israelites, every step forward is a step away from the familiar, from the gods and certainties of Egypt. For the Gnostics, this is where the true meaning of the Exodus begins to shimmer into view, a journey not just of bodies, but of consciousness, a pilgrimage from ignorance to gnosis. In the Gnostic imagination, the wilderness is a vast inner landscape. It is the realm of the unknown self, the place where the soul confronts its own shadows and the illusions that have shaped its identity. Here the echoes of Egypt still haunt the mind, and the promise of the promised land is little more than a whisper on the wind. Yet it is in this emptiness that the seeds of hidden knowledge are sown. Ancient Gnostic texts, long suppressed and nearly lost, offer a radical reinterpretation of these events. The Gnostics, a sect known for their mystical readings of scripture, saw the Exodus as a cosmic drama. Egypt, they taught, was the world of matter, ruled by the blind and arrogant demiurge. The Red Sea was the boundary between ignorance and awakening, and the wilderness was the soul's passage through the intermediate realms, the psychic and spiritual purgatories where the self is purified and prepared for union with the divine. The crossing of the Red Sea, so central to the Exodus story, is transformed in Gnostic thought into a symbol of spiritual rebirth. The waters are the waters of forgetfulness, the amnesia that descends upon the soul as it enters the world. To cross them is to remember, to awaken from the dream of separation and reclaim the knowledge of one's true origin. The Gnostic Gospel of Philip speaks of this moment. No one can enter the kingdom unless he is born again, born not of flesh, but of water and spirit. But what of the miracles that sustain the Israelites in the wilderness? The manna, the water from the rock, the pillar of fire. Each is recast as a symbol of the soul's nourishment by hidden wisdom. Manna is not mere bread, but the secret teachings that descend from the higher realms, sustaining those who seek the light. The rock from which water flows is the heart, cracked open by suffering and longing, from which the living waters of Gnosis pour forth. The pillar of fire is the inner light, the spark of divinity that guides the seeker through the darkness of unknowing. The Gnostics were not content with the surface of the story. They searched for connections, for echoes of older mysteries and deeper truths. In the serpent lifted by Moses in the wilderness, they saw not a symbol of evil, but of wisdom, the same serpent who, in the Garden of Eden, offered knowledge to humanity. For the Gnostic, the serpent is Sophia, the divine feminine, the voice of wisdom suppressed by the demiurge, but never silenced. To look upon the serpent and live is to embrace knowledge, to recognize that salvation comes not through blind obedience, but through the courage to seek and to know. Unexpected links begin to emerge. The story of the Exodus resonates with the myths of other ancient peoples, with the journeys of Gilgamesh, with the wanderings of Orpheus, with the secret teachings of the Hermetic tradition. The Gnostics saw in these parallels a confirmation of their vision, that the story of liberation is universal, that every soul is called to leave its Egypt and seek its own promised land. Even the figure of Moses is transformed. No longer simply the lawgiver, he becomes the archetype of the awakened mind, the Logos who mediates between the world of matter and the world of spirit. In some Gnostic texts, Moses is paired with Joshua, whose name in Hebrew is Yeshua, the same as Jesus. The journey does not end with Moses, who can only glimpse the promised land from afar, but with Joshua, who leads the people across the Jordan, a river that, in Gnostic symbolism, marks the final passage from death to life, from ignorance to gnosis. The wilderness, then, is not a place of exile, but of preparation. It is the necessary crucible in which the soul is stripped of its illusions and made ready for revelation. The hidden knowledge that the Gnostics sought was not a set of secret doctrines, but a transformation of consciousness, a new way of seeing, of being, of knowing. Yet the journey is far from over. The mountain of Sinai looms ahead, shrouded in cloud and mystery. There, the greatest secrets will be revealed, and the true nature of the law will be tested. For the Gnostics, the giving of the law is a moment of profound ambiguity. A gift, perhaps, but also a challenge, a test of discernment. Will the people recognize the voice of the true God, or will they mistake the commands of the demiurge for the path to freedom? The story twists and turns. The boundaries between good and evil, truth and illusion, grow ever more uncertain. The next chapter will bring the drama to its peak as the soul stands on the threshold of revelation, poised between the old world and the new. The wilderness has prepared the way, but the greatest mysteries are yet to be unveiled. The people tremble, for they know that what happens next will define not only their journey, but the destiny of every soul that seeks freedom from bondage. For the Gnostics, this is the crucible of revelation, a moment when the veil between worlds grows thin and the greatest spiritual secrets are offered, but not always understood. Moses ascends the mountain alone, swallowed by cloud and fire. The people wait below, caught between awe and terror, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Here, the Gnostic reading diverges sharply from the familiar tale. The law that Moses is about to receive, etched in stone, unyielding and absolute, is not simply a gift, but a test. In the Gnostic imagination, Sinai is the place where the soul must learn to discern the voice of the true God from the commands of the demiurge, the false creator who delights in rules and punishments, in order and control. The tablets descend, heavy with commandments. The people rejoice, believing that certainty has been restored. The law is a mirror, reflecting the soul's own capacity for both greatness and failure. As Moses lingers on the mountain, the people's fear grows. In their anxiety, they gather their gold and fashion a calf, a symbol of the old gods, the comforts of the flesh, the certainties of the world they left behind. The Gnostics see in this moment not just a lapse in faith, but a profound spiritual crisis. The soul, confronted with the silence of the true God, is tempted to fill the void with idols, with anything that promises certainty, even if it means returning to the old slavery. Moses descends, his face shining with the afterglow of revelation. He sees the people dancing around the golden calf, and his anger burns hot. The tablets shatter a symbol, for the Gnostics, of the inadequacy of external law to contain the fullness of divine truth. The true God, they say, is not found in stone or ritual, but in the living heart, in the spark of gnosis that survives even the greatest failures. Yet the story does not end in despair. The broken tablets are replaced, the covenant renewed, but everything has changed. The people have glimpsed both the heights of revelation and the depths of their own weakness. The law remains, but it is now understood as a guide, not a prison, a signpost pointing toward the inner journey that each soul must undertake. In the shadow of Sinai, the Gnostics find a deeper message. The promised land, so longed for and so distant, is not a place on a map, but a state of being. It is the pleroma, the fullness of divine light from which all souls have come and to which all are called to return. Moses, the great mediator, is allowed to see this land from afar, but not to enter. For the Gnostics, this is a profound symbol. The intellect, no matter how awakened, can only lead the soul so far. His name is the same as Yeshua, Jesus, who in Gnostic texts is the bringer of ultimate gnosis, the revealer of the hidden God. The journey from Egypt to Canaan is thus mirrored by the journey from law to grace, from the bondage of the demiurge to the freedom of the Spirit. The wilderness, Sinai, the shattered tablets, the crossing of the Jordan, all are stages in the soul's ascent, each with its own dangers and revelations. The Gnostics urge us to see ourselves in this story, to recognize the wilderness within, the idols we fashion, the laws we cling to, and the promise that lies just beyond the horizon. As the Israelites prepare to cross into the Promised Land, the tension reaches its peak. The old world is behind them, the new world before them, but the final step is the hardest of all. Will they trust the hidden God, the spark of Gnosis within, or will they turn back to the safety of what they have known? The answer, the Gnostics say, is never final. Each soul must choose again and again to leave Egypt, to cross the wilderness, to seek the light that calls from beyond. The journey is not over. The Promised Land awaits, but its true nature remains a mystery, shimmering just out of reach. The story of Exodus, as the Gnostics read it, is not a tale of the past, but an invitation to the present, a call to awaken, to seek, to cross the boundaries of the known and step into the fullness of being. The greatest revelation is yet to come, and with it, the possibility of a freedom that no pharaoh, no law, no wilderness can ever take away. The Promised Land shimmers on the horizon, not as a place of milk and honey, but as the fulfillment of a longing that has haunted the Israelites since the first step out of Egypt. For the Gnostics, this is the moment when the narrative sheds its historical skin and reveals its true form. The Exodus is not a story about a nation, but about the soul. It is not a tale of ancient wanderers, but a living map for every seeker who yearns to escape the prison of illusion and awaken to the fullness of divine light. As the Israelites stand at the banks of the Jordan, the air is thick with anticipation. The crossing is more than a physical act, it is a spiritual threshold, a passage from the world of becoming to the world of being, from exile to homecoming. In Gnostic thought, the Jordan is the final veil, the last boundary between the soul and the pleroma, the realm of the true God. To cross it is to leave behind the last vestiges of the demiurge's dominion, to step into the radiance of Gnosis. Yet even now, the journey is fraught with uncertainty. The lessons of the wilderness linger. The Israelites have learned that freedom is not given, but earned through struggle, through doubt, through the relentless pursuit of truth. They have discovered that the greatest enemies are not Pharaoh's armies, but the fears and illusions that dwell within. The Promised Land is not a reward for obedience, but the natural flowering of the soul that has remembered its origin and purpose. Joshua leads the people forward, his name echoing with the promise of salvation. In the Gnostic imagination, Joshua is not just a successor to Moses, but a symbol of the indwelling Christ, the Redeemer who awakens the divine spark within each person. The crossing of the Jordan is a baptism, a death and rebirth, a final shedding of the old self. The waters part, as they did at the Red Sea, but this time the crossing is not about escape, it is about arrival, about claiming the inheritance that has always been the soul's birthright. The land that awaits is not without its challenges. The Gnostic knows that the journey does not end with arrival. The Promised Land is not a static paradise, but a dynamic state of being. It is the beginning of a new quest, a higher calling to embody the light that has been found. The battles that follow, the struggles with the inhabitants of the land, the temptations to forget and fall back into old patterns are the ongoing trials of the awakened soul. Each victory and each failure is another opportunity to deepen Gnosis, to remember the truth that was glimpsed in the wilderness. Yet in this new land, the greatest revelation dawns. The true Exodus is eternal. It is not a one-time event, but a pattern woven into the fabric of existence. Every soul is called to leave its Egypt, to wander its wilderness, to climb its Sinai, and to cross its Jordan. The journey is both collective and individual, both ancient and ever new. The Promised Land is not a destination but a way of being, a life lived in the light of knowledge, in communion with the hidden God. The Gnostic message is both liberating and humbling. There is no final arrival, no resting place where all questions are answered and all struggles cease. The journey continues, always deeper, always higher, always toward the mystery that calls from beyond. The soul is both the wanderer and the home it seeks, both the question and the answer, both the exile and the beloved. As the story of Exodus draws to a close, the Gnostics leave us with a challenge and an invitation. What if the true meaning of the story has been hidden in plain sight all along? What if the promised land is not a place to be conquered, but a consciousness to be awakened? What if the journey out of Egypt is not just history, but destiny? A path that each of us must walk, again and again, until the light within us shines as brightly as the sun. The sands of Egypt, the trials of the wilderness, the thunder of Sinai, the waters of the Jordan, all are echoes of the soul's eternal quest. The Gnostic vision transforms the Exodus from a story of escape into a story of return, a return to the source, to the fullness, to the divine spark that is our true home. And so, as the Israelites step into the promised land, the narrative does not end. It opens like a door onto the infinite. The greatest mysteries remain, shimmering just beyond the horizon, waiting for those who dare to seek, to question, to remember. The Exodus is not over, it is only beginning. Where are you on the path? The question lingers, haunting and hopeful. The journey calls, the light awaits.